Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.
The Catholic Diocese of San Diego says it's considering filing for bankruptcy. Thanks for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. The announcement comes ahead of pending sexual abuse claims. KPBS reporter Jacob Ayer says the diocese has filed for bankruptcy before in a similar scenario roughly 15 years ago.
The diocese says they're considering filing for bankruptcy to ensure that the assets of the diocese will be used equitably to compensate all victims of sexual abuse.
It's been close to 30 years since the last time there was a claim for a diocesan priest in San Diego being accused of abusing a minor.
The diocese did file for bankruptcy in 2007, but the case was dismissed and they settled with victims for $200 million.
And here they're going to be doing this again. They don't need to file this bankruptcy. They want to file this bankruptcy to do two things. One is to protect their assets and try to reduce the amount that they need to pay claimants, and two, to cut off future claims against them.
Erwin Zalkin is a sexual abuse attorney who helped to negotiate that earlier settlement and currently represents almost 120 survivors in the lawsuits against the diocese. He says the latest announcement is premature and unfair to survivors.
But the diocese shouldn't be using a bankruptcy as a way of trying to lowball settlements with survivors. That's not the point of a bankruptcy.
Another attorney for some victims had even stronger criticism for the proposal. In a written statement, John Manley said he'd fight such a filing by a healthy, wealthy institution, and added, the mafia is not allowed to file bankruptcy, and neither should the Catholic hierarchy. The diocese says the new claims are the result of AB 218, a 2019 bill that extended the statute of limitations for child abuse claims. The diocese Kevin Eckery says they've received nearly 400 claims alleging the sexual abuse of a minor by a priest or other clergy member, with some cases dating back to 1945.
Almost 3/4 of them are in the period between 1945 and 1975.
The diocese plans to provide letters about the potential bankruptcy to parishioners at masses this weekend. Jacob Ayer, KPBS News.
It was a long-awaited moment this morning with the groundbreaking for San Diego's first AIDS memorial. It will be located in a park on Bankers Hill. KPBS reporter MG Perez was there and has more on the story decades in the making.
3, 2, 1.
A countdown to history as elected officials and many others break ground on a memorial park that will give them space to heal their broken hearts.
Many who died of AIDS died alone with the complete rejection of their blood family. But we, their chosen family, will always remember them in our hearts.
Most of the people who came to share this moment experienced the early days of the AIDS epidemic. While they survived, they lost so many friends and soulmates. These artist renderings show the $2.3 million Olive Street Park coming to Bankers Hill with the AIDS Memorial and a canyon overlook, in honor of the 8,000 San Diegans who died before there was hope of treatment. 26-year-old Tino Graciano was one of them. Big Mike Phillips is the best friend who took care of him before he died in 1989.
So to be here today, to be able to stand and put my foot on the shovel to say, you know, here's an opportunity to say, we don't forget you. We still remember you. We still love you. And because you had to die of this horrible disease doesn't mean that you're going to go and not be remembered and go in vain.
There have been more than 35 years of planning in the effort to turn this parking lot into a memorial park. It'll be another 2 years before it opens. That's a long time, and there is a long legacy of San Diegans who have supported people living and dying with AIDS from the beginning. Lori Leonard started Mama's Kitchen based on the cooking of her mother, the death of her brother from AIDS, and the need to feed patients who were going hungry. Gary Cheatham founded Auntie Helen's Fluff and Fold, doing laundry for patients who could not. Gary later died of AIDS. The legacy continues today for those now living with AIDS and HIV.
That's mostly what we do at Being Alive today. We serve about 10,000 people annually that would not have access to health care otherwise, and then help them keep their life above water.
Let us build this memorial not just as a tribute to the past, but as a symbol of hope for the future.
Several shovels full of hope that are just a beginning. MG Perez, KPBS News.
The earthquake that struck the southern portion of Turkey and the northern border of Syria is now the deadliest seismic event since the 2010 disaster in Haiti. There has been a massive global response to provide help to those in need, but some say it's not being distributed evenly between the two countries. Wael El-Zayat is a senior fellow with the Middle Eastern Institute Syria program, and he says that some of the challenges to get more aid are political issues.
So you have, to this day, people still being dug out by the Syrian Civil Defense, which is known as the White Helmets. These are first responders that have been trained, if you can imagine, to dig out people from the aftermath of bombings by the government forces and Russian Air Force, and now they've been using those same skills to dig out people.
El-Zayat says greater aid and response is needed. Some Syrians in San Diego will be standing in front of the downtown county administration center tomorrow at 1 p.m. to show solidarity with those affected by the earthquake. Tomorrow is International Day of Women and Girls in Science, but for one San Diego nonprofit, getting girls involved with STEM is a year-round endeavor. KPBS reporter Claire Strong went to meet them.
I plan on majoring in mechanical engineering with a concentration in robotics when I master.
I plan to be an engineer and start my own business.
I really want to be an entrepreneur. Yeah.
Meet the scientists, engineers, and business leaders of the future. These girls at San Diego-based nonprofit Greater Than Tech don't need a special occasion to celebrate science. They eat, sleep, and breathe it every day. But the lack of female representation within STEM is what inspired the launch of the nonprofit in the first place.
When you see Fortune 50 companies, CEOs, people who are in the C-suite making decisions, you most likely will not see a woman of color in that type of space and in that type of position. So we want students to know that they can be decision makers, create new opportunities for others, and really think about themselves as leaders at a young age.
Oh, it's so wrinkly.
I know.
Greater Than Tech teaches students things like robotics, drones, and the different career paths involving science. Leilani Wahago fell in love with STEM after the nonprofit visited her school.
I saw a great opportunity because in the demo, we were not only building and coding, but we were doing business pitches and demonstrating it to these judges, which I really enjoy doing.
Since its creation back in 2019, around 300 kids have been taught by Greater Than Tech. Fellow co-founder Dr. Brittany Wheeler thinks women have a lot to offer the world of STEM.
It's the self-confidence, it's the intuitiveness. We bring that into engineering and wanting to solve problems. We kind of put our heart and soul into anything we do as women, so we're going to make sure we do it right.
Student Alexandra Lawson is grateful to have such strong women to guide her.
I think it's important that we have role models because it can inspire them that they can do this too, and that they can one day hopefully achieve it too.
Jacqueline Salinas is another STEM success story.
Thanks to Greater Than Tech, I was able to get a full ride to Columbia University.
She credits the nonprofit with giving her the confidence to pursue her passion.
I have always been interested in engineering. However, I thought that would stay a dream since I never really had the chance to develop it. And it was until I joined Greater Than Tech and really started to learn more about engineering that really came a reality for me.
Tomorrow may be International Day of Women and Girls in Science, but for these young ladies, science is part of their everyday life. Claire Strong, KPBS News.
This weekend is Super Bowl Sunday, which has a history here in San Diego. KPBS reporter Melissa May takes us back to the first time our city hosted the big game and when quarterback Doug Williams made history.
San Diego never won a Super Bowl, but the city has hosted the game 3 times. And during Super Bowl 22, history was made.
He was from Washington, and that whole thing, that first black quarterback, Super Bowl, and they won. Doug Williams, I love you. If I was able to speak to him together, I would just say, I love you, man. God bless you.
That's Philip Smith. He was a 31-year-old sailor stationed in San Diego during that Super Bowl. He couldn't get a ticket to the game, but he says he got the next best thing.
First time I saw that was Doug Williams in that hotel. I had the Super Bowl 22 program. Say, Doug, can you please sign that for me? Sure. He signed it, gave it back, he shook hands. His hands were just, wow. Very, very big.
It's pretty obvious that Smith is a Washington superfan, and Doug Williams was more than just a player to him.
I remember that if you were a black football player, no, you don't be a quarterback. You can run fast, you can catch, you might even be able to tackle. But, man, a quarterback, man, not right now. But Doug Williams, he came in there and he did it.
Doug Williams, for me, in football terms, he may not be at the exact same table as Jackie Robinson, but he's in the same lobby. He's at the same set of tables as in terms of breaking through.
George Whitfield Jr. is a quarterback engineer, meaning he coaches quarterbacks. He was a preteen during that Super Bowl.
The whole world's watching this. So this means I for sure can do this now. Him getting there was already a story. Had it been a battle, it would have been a big deal, it would have been great. But to show out like that, yeah, I cried.
He says Williams' win gave the African-American community hope.
Doug Williams, you gotta do it at the biggest stage. He did do it at the biggest stage. Not just crack the door, but like his hands have been on that big, heavy door for decades now. Now, there's some other hands helping, but it was his 2 hands initially to push that through.
I watched and I looked at you. I knew you got hurt, but you came up. You got stronger. And I wanted to look at you and say, you, sir, you are strong. And everybody else, you want to be strong too.
Thank you for the things we know. Thank you for the things we don't know. Thank you for our assumptions about your process. Thank you for your resilience.
Super Bowl 22 ended with Washington scoring 42 points and Denver scoring 10. Doug Williams won MVP and set NFL records. But more importantly, he showed kids that look like him that they belong on the biggest stage in sports. Melissa May, KPBS News.
The ads are just a big draw as the game, just as big of a draw as the game. Ivan Rodriguez tells us how the approach is changing this year and why major brands are willing to pay record high prices to be part of the show.
Popcorners are breaking bad.
What are these? We call them popcorners. Say their name.
Doritos are feeding a paparazzi frenzy.
Is it true about the low triangle?
Maybe.
Baby!
And M&Ms are going in a shocking new direction.
What does the world really want? Clams.
This year's supersized Super Bowl ads seem to have a little something for everyone.
Tell me more, tell me more.
It's
the one day of the year that people aren't running in the opposite direction of the ads.
With viewership likely to be over 100 million, advertisers can make big gains by catching eyes during the big game. But with a 30-second spot going for $7 million, running an ad can also be a big gamble.
There's going to be maybe 60 commercials. We'll probably talk about 10 of them on Monday. So there's a big risk there.
If early previews are any indication, the big feature in this year's ads:
celebrities, celebrities, celebrities.
Major companies are banking on superstars to get that post-Super Bowl buzz.
Hello, I'm Sarah McLachlan.
Diddy don't do jingles.
Glennon says the most impactful ads, however, don't have to be star-studded. The key to success is creating a conversation.
That's going to be a big win. And absolutely, this Super Bowl is a great way to do that.
Ivan Rodriguez, KPBS News.
Black Comics Day returns to the World Beat Cultural Center tomorrow to celebrate its 5th year. The free mini convention celebrates Black creators and artists from Marvel, DC, and Black-owned independent companies. KPBS arts reporter Beth Accomando has this preview.
My name is Keithan Jones. I have a company called KID, which stands for The Kid in You Never Dies.
Earlier this week, comics creator Keithan Jones met with 5th graders from the Ifton Charter School at the World Beat Cultural Center.
You're going to throw out suggestions on what this character should look like. We're going to create a superhero, okay? On the chest, most superheroes have something that represents what their power is or a initial of their name. Star?
And today I really enjoyed choosing the character that I wanted. I liked how she had the star because it represents our country.
Keithan is so incredible that he brings this to the World Beat Center. He realized they have their heroes and sheroes. And that's so important that we teach our own history. Now, our history, not his story, our story.
Jones demonstrated how eager kids are to see themselves and their culture represented. But adults can get excited about superheroes too.
I've created a brand new Black superhero for Marvel. That's what it is.
An old Silver Surfer comic from the 1960s inspired John Jennings to resurrect the Marvel character of Dr. Alvin B. Harper as a cosmic superhero named Ghostlight. Similarly, a 1972 blaxploitation film prompted Rodney Barnes to bring another pop culture figure back to life.
You shall pay, Black Prince. I curse you with my name. You shall be Blackula. Blackula.
The result is a graphic novel called Blackula, Return of the King.
Even as a kid, when I saw the movie, I always said, if I ever had the chance to do this again, I would change some things around. And underneath blaxploitation, there was this subversive idea of what was happening in society. That was like the civil rights movement, and there was this feeling of revolution that was under all of them, with the afros and the fashion and the music, and just there was this tone that was there.
Black Comics Day wants to tap into that sense of revolution by celebrating Black creators like Barnes, Jennings, and Kevin Grievous, who will all appear on a panel this year called Get Shooked, the new Masters of Horror. All three have stories in the upcoming comic called Shook, a Black horror anthology. Horror tales appeal to the writers because they provide the perfect canvas for social commentary.
They give us a sense of distance from social issues, like things that actually really do bother us. It's almost like being afraid in a safe space, you know? They allow you to actually talk about particular types of oppressive, monstrous things that have actually happened to people of color in our country with a certain amount of metaphor and distance, you know, and that's very appealing.
In addition to panels, Black Comics Day has a dealer's room for Black creators.
The majority of the artists set up at their booths where you can congregate with them, see their merchandise, buy their merchandise, ask them questions. And young artists, I encourage you to bring your portfolios if you want some feedback, or who knows, it could lead to a job.
The convention also celebrates the comic medium.
There's no medium that speaks so much to the surreal as comics do. And the other thing is that everything on the page can tell a story, from like the line quality to the color to the typeface you use. Everything has symbolic meaning, and I think that's really interesting too. So it's a little bit like poetry to me.
Jones tends to avoid overt messages in his own comic, The Power Knights, and instead lets the convention speak to his social concerns.
Black Comics Day is my statement when it comes to race relations, when it comes to civil rights, when it comes to social commentary on what's going on in the world today. Black Comics Day is my idea of getting everyone together in one space from all cultures, all races, and co-mingle and have a good time and see that we all like the same kind of things.
Black Comics Day once again highlights the diversity and artistry of Black creators as it returns to the World Beat Cultural Center in Balboa Park this weekend. Beth Accomando, KPBS News.
I'm Amna Nawaz. Tonight on the NewsHour, the FBI searches former Vice President Mike Pence's home for classified documents. The latest coming up at 7 after Evening Edition on KPBS.
One of the West's most recognizable landmarks might soon look a lot different, if not vanish altogether in the years ahead. Scientists are warning Utah's Great Salt Lake is on a collision course with climate change. Bill Weir asks what can be done to save it.
This is what is left of the Great Salt Lake. It hit record lows in recent months, exposing around 800 square miles of lake bed. But unchecked water use and climate change aren't just threatening the birds and sailboaters. And here the western megadrought threatens a lot more than just snow sports, agriculture, and industry. Because this lake bed holds centuries of toxic runoff, mercury, selenium, arsenic, some of it natural, some of it man-made mining waste. But if it turns to dust and adds to some of the worst air pollution in the country, this is a threat to the lungs of over 2.5 million people.
We've done this experiment in history before. We know about dust storms, we know about particulate pollution, we know about heavy metals and how they're bad for humans. This is an ecological disaster that will become a human health disaster.
Bonnie Baxter is among the scientists who recently warned that the Great Salt Lake, as we know it, could be gone in 5 years. Shriveled into fingers of lifeless water before becoming the Great Toxic Dust Bowl.
You can kind of see a person standing out there like the water would have been above their head just a few years ago.
This is what is known as a terminal lake with no rivers to take minerals to the sea. So they build up over time, just like Owens Lake in California. After developers notoriously drained it a century ago to build Los Angeles, it both inspired the movie Chinatown and forced Californians to spend in the billions to control the toxic dust that remains a threat 100 years later.
This lake is 12 to 15 times bigger than Owens Lake. It's right next to a metropolitan center, which that lake was not. So there are people who will breathe this dust immediately, and we're really, really concerned about that happening here. So we have done that experiment. We shouldn't do it again.
It was human choices that led to that catastrophic event, right? We're looking at the Great Salt Lake in a position right now to where we can avoid that catastrophe, where we don't have to spend those billions of dollars in remediation in the future if we make choices today.
Brian Steed and John Lynn are from rival Utah universities, one with a background in state government, the other an atmospheric scientist.
Well, the thing is, it's bipartisan, right? The air quality, we all want clean air.
Together, they're part of the newly formed Great Salt Lake Strike Team, out to convince everyone that every drop counts.
For a long time, I don't think that people were sufficiently talking for the lake. Now I think that we have a lot of people interested, the governor of the state, the legislature, who's all very interested in coming up with different scenarios and different solutions so that we don't end up with that catastrophic outcome.
It seems like the path of least resistance is for the state to pay farmers for their water rights. Is that going to happen?
I don't know. It remains to be seen. I mean, I think there's a lot of things that we could do that go to that extreme.
Among the signs of change, when U.S. Magnesium wanted to extend canals into the lake, the state said no. And last year, the legislature finally began revising water laws written in the days of the Wild West.
Sometimes I feel like we take a step forward and sometimes we take a step back, but in general, all those pieces of water legislation that passed in 2022 were bipartisan and unanimous. Like, where does that happen anymore?
Fingers crossed it keeps happening, because the only thing that can keep the Salt Lake great is lots of snow and even more cooperation.
Here's a look at today's weather headlines. Well, our winds will die down into tonight, and then we'll pay attention to a storm dropping down the coast from the north. And with that, we'll see some much cooler air over the weekend. Showers will return, especially later Saturday and into Sunday. And later Saturday into Saturday night, we should have some strong gusty westerly winds in the interior sections into the mountains. As we take a look at the weather in the metro tonight, partly cloudy. Temperature settles down to about 50 degrees. Looking at our weather tonight, just a few clouds around. Temperatures cooling into the lower 40s. Oceanside, Escondido, Ramona's down to 39. El Cajon's at 45. Borrego Springs 45 and Mount Laguna at 38. And here on our futurecast comes our next storm that'll be swirling its way down the coast overnight and into early tomorrow. We'll just see some high clouds and then low clouds as we get the strong onshore flow. So here's a look at our forecast for tomorrow. Clouds will be with us and some showers will start to develop, especially later in the day. And it'll be a cooler day, too. Temperatures only in the lower 60s. Mount Laguna will be in the low 40s. Here's that storm dropping down the coast during the day on Sunday. Cool, breezy, some showers. Snow levels in the mountains probably dropping down to about 4,000 feet, but we're not expecting any significant accumulation. So here's our extended forecast for you. Cooler Saturday, showers develop, pretty cool for Sunday into Monday. Next system comes through, moisture starved, a couple of showers. That's on Tuesday. Inland sections, you can see the cooling trend with the showers. Next system comes in Tuesday, another cool showery day. Into the mountains we go. And we'll be looking at some rain and snow showers. And then the next system Tuesday could give us an icy mix and pretty cold behind that one. And in the deserts, we'll see shower or thunderstorm over the weekend. And then a nice day Monday. And then it gets windy, cooler early next week. And for KPBS News, I'm meteorologist Mark Mancuso.
And you can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org. Thanks so much for joining us. I'm Maya Trabulsi. Good night.
Major funding for KPBS Evening Edition has been made possible in part by Bill Howe Family of Companies, providing San Diego with plumbing, heating and air, restoration, flood and remodeling services for over 40 years. Call 1-800-BILL-HOWE or visit billhowe.com. And by the Conrad Prebys Foundation, Darlene Marcos Shiley, and by the following. And by viewers like you. Thank you.